Hey guys, so with this is Willie, I think that's his name. I watch him, but normally I don't react to this kind of content. Usually it's World of War, because it's World of Warcraft and but I think I did something similar. No, I think it was what was it? Basically for each continent, like if I was to wake up, if you were to wake up one day, you go to bed and you wake up the next day and you're on Azeroth, right? What zone would you just want to chill in? What zone would for like I said for Northrend, it'd be Crystal Song Forest. For like Pandaria, it would probably be I can't remember actually what I said. Valley of Four Winds, just because there's a lot of rain there, and I would just love to stay at like the main hub area there and just sit inside those houses and just watch the rain fall. But of course it says best zone. It could be the best leveling zone, it could be the best aesthetic wise, it could. So let's see what Willie has to say, and let's see if we agree with him.
In the world of Warcraft, zones are the building blocks that create the world that your character lives in. From the easygoing starter zones when you're first just getting a look into this world, or notorious zones like Stranglethorn Vale on PvP servers, where questing naturally brings together so many players of the opposite faction and there are many battles, all the way to endgame zones like the Eastern Plaguelands that are dark, gloomy, and threatening. These are the places that the game happens. Stories are told and memories are made, and each and every expansion has brought on a unique set of zones for players, from the mountains of Kunlai to open world cities such as Soromar and beyond. The zones of World of Warcraft have always been a huge part of it, and definitely always will be. So today I wanted to cover what for me has been the best overall zone of each of World of Warcraft's expansions so far. We'll also be going in order of how good the zones are instead of by expansions. So the zones towards the start of the video are great for their expansion but not the best overall, and the ones towards the end are the best of the best. So with that said, well, let's make a start. But first, and we'll be starting off in the Cataclysm for our first pick here, the expansion which totally changed the whole world of vanilla forevermore. I'll also be focusing on the leveling zones from 80 to 85 here, as despite every zone undergoing changes, these were the truly new additions to the game. And one of the criticisms Cataclysm gets is that it goes a bit too far with pop culture references. I mean, sure, World of Warcraft has always done this, but in Cataclysm they forgot to do it in moderation. There was just too many of them. And if I hadn't played through Cataclysm fairly recently, I would have picked Uldum here, because I wanted this zone to be cool so badly. This had been a zone which was rumoured to exist all the way back since vanilla, and
Yeah, Oldham. Back in the day, if you were in Tanaris, there you saw this. There was a big old gate there, and I think these were elites, really vicious dudes, really wicked guys. Um, and you knew that Oldham just lay beyond. And then the Cataclysm happened. Those gates were poof, and we got to explore the zone of Oldham, which I personally love. I love the ancient Egyptian aesthetic. Pretty much ever since I was little, I loved the whole ancient Egyptian, the culture, the aesthetic of it. So when I saw Oldham take inspiration from ancient Egypt, I was like, oh man, this is so good, so good. It also has probably one of the best quests, where you're basically a huge fireball and you're mowing down gnomes. That's the quest. You're a massive fireball. You're spinning around. I think it's got to kill like 100 gnomes or something like that. It's a real fun quest. A real fun quest. Right up there with the dude was in Blasted Lands or Badlands or whatever it is, with the guy who tells you the story of how he punched Deathwing in the face. And I punched that dragon right in the face. When you're going through and you actually get to punch Deathwing in the face. But this quest, it was so fun. Um, and there's like I said, with the whole Egyptian thing, you had your oasis. You're like, oh, it's so terrible out here. If only there was. And then you see this beautiful oasis. And it had everything you would expect from a place based on Egypt. Um, Yeah, really wicked place. You had Throne of Four Winds. So you had some really good dungeons, really good raid. Well, actually, not really that great. It was interesting. It was interesting, but it was fun. It's everything you would expect from a zone that looks like this.
It was even tied into a quest that you complete after having done a full run of Alderman, and to be honest, even though the first half of Alderman's questing is basically an Indiana Jones reference, I still enjoyed it a lot. It did feel as though you were uncovering ancient tombs and exploring this vast desert that had been lost to time, but then eventually you reach what is roughly the second half of the Alderman questing, and you come across a character called Commander Schnotz, and at this point, as much as I hate using the word, the zone just becomes cringe. He's supposed to be the stereotypical bad guy from Indiana Jones, but it just gets way too much with how involved he is. All in all, the joke just goes too far. So unfortunately, as much as I like to, I can't really pick Oldham, and the rest of the zones in Cataclysm are okay to good though, I think. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna have to pick Mount Hyjal. Hyjal was a zone that was briefly visited as a raid during the Burning Crusade, and it was even a place you could access in vanilla, but this was the first time that it was brought to life as a full-on zone. It was also one of the 2 starting zones in Cataclysm as well, featuring a story that led all the way up to the opening of the Firelands raid in a later patch. Overall, Cataclysm did introduce some good zones, and Hyjal gets the pick here. Next up is the...
Yeah, Hyjal, absolutely gorgeous. You had such a wide array of like areas. You have the beautiful lush green areas, and you have like these charred um woods and stuff like that. But then you have down there, where the Firelands raid is. Also, you can find a rare turtle around there. There were a lot of rare pets that you could find around there. There was the one with was it a panther or whatever, where you basically, in order to tame it, you had to take your gear off. Otherwise, it would just pretty much one-shot you. So they made it to where you had to take your gear off. There was also the owl right there by oh my god, what's his name? The Sanctuarium of Lorne. Like there is like one tree, and you see this the spirit owl is kind of flying around. And pretty much, in order to tame it, you gotta like fly up there and like land on the tip of the tree, and then you can just go ahead and try to tame it. But there were a lot of cool animals you could tame there. Molten Front, there were a lot of spiders there you could tame, really gorgeous looking spiders. One of them was a test of endurance. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. But yeah, Hyjal had some really great quests. I think of Cataclysm at least. Yeah, definitely Hyjal. Like I said, I love Oldham. I wasn't a fan of Twilight Highlands. I really don't like Vazir. Vazir is gorgeous. Don't get me wrong. Vazir is absolutely gorgeous. It sucks as a zone. It really sucks as a zone. Deepholm, same thing. It's really gorgeous with all the giant, crystals and stuff like that. But I wasn't feeling it. So Hyjal is definitely the one. I mean, Ysera, Malfurion, Tyrande. You see Deathwing pop up. Ragnaros is here. I mean, all these great characters pop up, and it's just a really beautiful zone. So yeah, I definitely agree. Hyjal, it definitely had the better experience leveling. The aesthetic of the zone was just a lot more pleasing to look at, as opposed to something like I said, like Twilight Highlands, which was like or Vazir, which again, that is gorgeous, but the quest and like the depth perception, and you think you're hitting something that's right in front of you, and it turns out you think it's like this, but they're all the way down there, and you're up here, and you have to like it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. If you have to go into the water to battle, to quest sometimes, that's one thing. But having an entire zone, no, there's a reason why they really haven't done anything like Vashj'ir since Cataclysm, because it just people don't like it.
Shadowlands, an expansion which absolutely had some impressive visuals, such as when you are flying from one zone to the next from Oribos. And it's the visuals which I think are the main thing that draws me towards picking my favourite zone here, which is going to be Ardenweald. Ardenweald must have one of the most vibrant colour palettes of any WoW zone that we've seen, with more or less something standing out at every single corner you turn. The reason Shadowlands is at this point on the list though is that every zone, at least early on into the expansion, felt as though they had a common problem. They just weren't much fun to navigate without flying.
Yeah, but Ardenweald definitely, the blues and the purples and it's just the way they blend together, the animals, like the whole basically where your wild gods and stuff like that. That's where they go. That's where Ysera went to. Really cool place. Revendreth, if you like the whole goth vampire aesthetic. I mean, Revendreth completely gorgeous too. You got like the blood sky going on, and Bastion is really cool looking. Really very ethereal when you look at it. It's very softer. It's very soft colors, very almost like pastel. It's very ethereal, and it's meant to feel that way. Maldraxxus is just ugh. It's just to look at. The Maw, same thing. But these two, or actually these three, they actually have some kind of diversity to them. They have, color palettes that are more pleasing. Even though you got Revendreth with the harsher, the darker tones, the blacks and the dark grays and the crimson, stuff like that. The aesthetic, the whole goth vampire sort of thing, it makes up for that. The architecture is really cool looking. Ardenweald, same thing. Like I said, the blues and the purples and how how a lot of the stuff looks like it's a galaxy or the universe. You got things that look like they're stars inside the trees and all that. Really, really nice. And then, like I said, with Bastion, very softer, very ethereal looking. I mean, it would make sense about who runs the place. But not really ethereal, very angelic looking because, But yeah, Ardenweald is definitely the place that if I was to get stuck in the Shadowlands, Ardenweald's the place I'd want to chill. Of course, these are just some places. There's more places in Shadowlands that we haven't even seen yet, so but these are just what they introduced us to. But I agree, Ardenweald, it's taking away leveling, it is just more appealing to look at.
Now you did end up getting flying in Shadowlands in patch 9.1, but they made you grind for it, and if you were coming back to the game you probably had a fair bit of work ahead of you before you could access it, including a large quest chain, your Covenant story, and reaching a certain renown level. But without flying there were just so many vertically placed areas or pathways where you had to go miles around something, and eventually it just got kind of annoying to get around the Shadowlands. Despite that, from the zones that existed and from my experience playing the expansion, I still think I'm picking Ardenweald.
Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. Look at this. Just, it's so gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. Like, everything about Ardenweald is just so mystical looking and just so magic. It's just magic. And I think that's what people were drawn so much about the level. That's what drew people in the most, was just how fantastical it looked. You had little face sprites floating around. People know that it's where wild gods and things come to die. Like Ysera's there and Ursoc was there, and so it was just like, oh, this is a cool place.
here. Following that is the Warlords of Draenor, and here we're going to be going with Shadowmoon Valley. So Warlords of Draenor infamously had an absolute disaster of a launch, but after you got out of your garrison and into the open world, things started to improve. Shadowmoon Valley was the opening zone that Alliance players had to experience, which was a stark contrast from Shadowmoon Valley during the Burning Crusade, where it was just a total wasteland. Here in Warlords of Draenor is much more of a somber experience that feels as though a shadow truly has been cast over the entire zone. I think it's also one of the better attempts Warlords of Draenor had at creating a zone that showed us how Draenor would look before it became Outland. I guess the biggest
Well, they had a chance to do that with Farallon, but instead, well, we wanted to add Farallon, but it just wouldn't fit into the story. Farallon is what Netherstorm used to be before it became Netherstorm. So basically, when you go to Netherstorm, you see those big old like biodomes, and you see the lush forest. That lush forest is what used to be all over Farallon. But then once the planet decided that it didn't want to be a planet anymore, only small parts of it were preserved. So when you go to the domes, when you talk to the ethereals and you see the animals and you see this lush forest, that's what Farallon used to look like. And they're like, oh yeah, you're gonna get to see pre-shattering of Draenor, Netherstorm. You get to see when it was Farallon. And everyone's like, holy crap. And then it's, nope. You can send one of your little followers on a mission, says finding Farallon, but you don't actually get to go there. So if they kept that zone, that probably would have been another great example of what Draenor used to look like before it became Outland. But for me, it's great, but I would have to go with Nagrand. Nagrand, even after it's destroyed, is completely gorgeous. But seeing Nagrand as, whole, what it was before, everything just started floating around, and especially in the Warlords of Draenor, the updated graphics, Nagrand is absolutely gorgeous. Rolling green fields and plenty of rocky mountains, and just here it's just like a simple color palette. It gets just boring after a while, at least in my opinion. Now the story here is great. Of course, Nagrand also had the Thrall Garrosh thing, so how do you top that? But this place had some really good stuff, really good quests. You had like the Ner'zhul stuff going on, because that's his home base is here. Shadowmoon Burial Grounds and all that. You had the stuff with like Yrel and the Prophet. His like sacrifice and all that. But I would still have to go into Nagrand. I'd have to give it to Nagrand. But again, that's just me. These are his picks. These are just mine.
Disappointment with the zone is that Karabor, which you'll know as the Black Temple from TBC, was absent as it was intended to be used originally within the zone. In fact, Blizzard planned at one point for Karabor to be the Alliance capital during WoD, instead of some small forgettable camp next to Ashran. A big shame, but missing content was unfortunately a big part of what made Warlords of Draenor such a letdown for many players. Despite all that, I think Shadowmoon Valley has to be the pick here as a solid opening zone to Warlords of Draenor and a good representation of Draenor pre-TBC. After that, I have Dragonflight, which, thinking about it, I'm kinda surprised which I'm putting it at this point on the list, because I think back to this expansion and the first thing that comes up is swooping around, dragon riding and taking in all of the sights. Dragonflight had to have been the most cinematic world WoW had ever seen up to this point in time, and that was definitely one of its strong points for me, but ideally the zone needs to do a bit more than just looking nice. And when I think about the moments when I'm not flying around at max speed on my dragon, the zones don't seem quite as impressive. All the same though, if I'm picking a zone from Dragonflight, I'm going for the Azure Span. I definitely got some kind of Grizzly Hills type vibes from this zone, and given the music that plays there, I don't think this was a mistake from Blizzard either. It almost feels as though it's a bit of a mashup of different Wrath of the Lich King zones such as Grizzly Hills or Borean Tundra in appearance.
Exactly, and that's what people said from the very first time we saw a preview of this place. We knew that this was going to be like some kind of mashup between Grizzly Hills and, like, you know, Howling Fjord and other places in Northrend. The colors, you have these very like autumn colors. It's really beautiful. These towering trees. You have like all the arcane stuff going on, which arcane, you got that blue, the purple. So you have like this beautiful arcane bit going on. So yeah, I would have to say of all the zones in Dragonflight, this would be the best, in my opinion, both aesthetically. The quests are pretty good. Navigation is fairly simple, because even with dragons and the swoopity swoop, I prefer things that aren't so vertically challenged. But this place, I mean, this place right here, this area, you know, you see the path and it just goes down. There's nothing better than riding on these mounts with dynamic flying and just like not even having to press anything. You just like speed along because you're going downhill, so you're naturally getting that velocity and you don't even have to touch anything. You just move your, you know, back and forth. You just move down this whole thing. It's so fun. It's so fun. But yeah, you definitely get a Grizzly Hills, Howling Fjord, Borean Tundra kind of feel from this place. And like you said, I think that's what they were going for. There's a lot of snow. Like I said, you have these beautiful autumn colors, which really sets the mood. You know, when you see autumn colors, you're like, ooh. When you look at autumn colors, you're just like, ooh, it just looks cold. You know, it just looks cold. And it is. It's very cold there. So very seldom, especially in some games, does, you know, you just look at a place and you're like, man, that is cold. I can feel the coldness here. But yeah, I definitely agree. This place, just across the board, is way, it's the best in Dragonflight.
And I am completely okay with that. There's even a Tuskar village on the edge of the waters too. You can't get more Wrath of the Lich King than having a random Tuskar village, can you? Overall, the Azure Span is a great looking zone, enjoyed the music, and I think it was the best addition from Dragonflight. Next is World of Warcraft's current expansion, The War Within, and honestly the pick here is very close to the Azure Span. In fact, I think these two are kind of interchangeable for me. Anyways, I think there's been one standout zone from The War Within so far, and that has to be Hallowfall. One of the best moments about Hallowfall is when you first ascend up that massive cave from Ashkahet and get the first sight of the Beladar illuminating the entire zone. Hallowfall is an underground zone too, which I've historically been critical of in other videos, but because of the size of the zone and the amount of light in it, it doesn't actually feel as though you are underground. I think this was a great decision for The War Within, as there are already plenty of underground zones to go and see, so Hallowfall provided some much needed variety other than seeing another zone predominantly themed around grey rocks and obstacles.
Yeah, Baladar, definitely the main piece of the zone. You have this giant freaking crystal just right there, and it goes from light to void. The architecture of the buildings is really, really nice looking. The quest with the strange fish, you know, knowing that there's like, you know, Kraken, Leviathan type things down there, creatures of the void. They're like, oh, hey, by the way, if you bring that light into our lair, you must die. But yeah, it every other zone, it just feels so enclosed. You have, you know, things hanging from the ceiling, and regardless of what they are, it could really be anything. It just, everything's so claustrophobic there in like all these other zones, but you have Hallowfall and it's so open most of the time you forget you're inside a cavern because it's so wide, it's so broad, it's open area, and you forget that you're underground, as opposed to all the other zones where you're reminded, yeah, you're underground. Apart from when, obviously when you're above ground when you start out. But if we're talking about the underground zones, yeah, Halifall definitely better. Really cool quests there, aesthetically pleasing. And again, it just makes you feel like you're not underground. And being able to look up and see this, and being able to see it woof from light, woof to void, that's really, really cool. Really cool.
Also a throwback to Arathi forces, which is an interesting tie-in to a very old faction in the WoW universe, and rediscovering them and why they've been here and what they've been doing was interesting to take part in. Halifall feels like one of the more standout zones we've seen in WoW for a while, so based on that, so far in the War Within it gets the pick from me. Following that, we're heading back a few expansions to Battle for Azeroth. For all the problems that BFA brought on with all of its tasks that needed to be done weekly, temporary power gains and more, it definitely had a bunch of good zones in it as a whole, and I think the one that was especially good was Kul Tiras. Kul Tiras is of course another throwback to a place which has existed in the WoW universe as far back as the RTS games, and in WoW during vanilla you can find Kul Tiras units in Joritar occupying a fortress that low-level Horde players have to deal with. So finally getting a chance to visit this place for real was something that I think a lot of people would have been looking forwards to when it was announced to be a zone for the expansion, and I think Blizzard did a good job in delivering a port city in Kul Tiras. Highlights of the zone include Borealis as the Alliance capital, where they really got the feeling of the city right, and it was also just super convenient to navigate without being overwhelmingly large or confusing. The soundtrack was great and memorable, and definitely added to the whole maritime themes that they had going on throughout the zone. Outside of
And we have our good old friend Dalen Proudmoore. He's not a good friend, he was a racist. He got what he deserved.
Borealis was a snowy mountainous zone which was easy enough to navigate, had a lot of quests going on, and it was just a good time to play through for me. Kul Tiras was definitely a high point of the Battle for Azeroth expansion, and despite there being many other good zones that will be worth a mention, I think this is the best one overall for me. Next up we have...
Yeah, when it came to BFA, none of the zones really stuck out. Some of them had great questing, but some of them, when you go through these zones, you want something that's aesthetically pleasing, Because when it's not nice to look at, you're just like, ugh, do I have to keep being here? But I didn't level any Alliance. I leveled Horde, but the times where you did have to come over here, I mean, I definitely agree. This area is probably the best, the most diverse when it comes to landscape, to geometry. You have your snow-capped mountains, you've got, these lush rivers, you've got this foresty area. So it was definitely more diverse when it came to landscaping, which is really a nice thing to have. I mean, some zones don't need it, but it helps out. But yeah, if I had a leveling experience, yeah, I definitely would agree. Kul Tiras was just a lot better.
The entry from Mists of Pandaria, and for this expansion the choice for me is going to be Kunlai Summit. This is a zone you'll encounter about halfway through your questing journey. This area features Pandara monasteries, huge mountain ranges to cover, and of course the Grummels. And with some not so subtle hints to the Himalayas and Sherpas and so on, this zone has always had quite a majestic feeling to it. It also stands along the wall to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms, which you still won't be entering for some time whilst you're leveling, as well well as moving on to more dangerous territory further west in the Townlong Steppes. Kunlai Summit really captures that zen feeling that Mists of Pandaria tries to accomplish through its landscape, the Pandaren race, the music, and the quests that take place within it. It's interesting to see the monasteries from the outside to search for treasure in hidden places, and there's a lot of hidden treasure in Mop, and of course there's that one quest where you have to scale the tallest mountain. Overall a very strong zone, good soundtrack, and it just fits the theme that Pandaria is going for so well, so that's why it gets my pick for Mr. Pandaria.
Yeah, Vale of Eternal Blossoms or Valley of Four Winds. You know, if you want to talk about zen and balance and peace, I mean, Valley of Four Winds, I mean, they're farmers. So, again, the music there is great. The fact that it rains, I personally love rain. So, again, just imagining myself having to be stuck in a place like that, just sitting inside one of those Pandaren-made buildings and just, like, watching the rain fall and listening to it fall on the roof, and you know, and then loot and pillage. Get to hear that all the time. But then you have the legendary brewery right there, the Storm Stout Brewery. You can have a great view of the Great Wall of China. No, you have the wall right here. Goes all the way down. But, yeah. I mean, they're farmers. Come on. Come on. I don't know why I chose Kunlai Summit. I mean, it would either... I mean, I was expecting him more of Jade Forest. You know, because it's a great leveling experience. Because that's where you start out. Both Alliance and Horde, just different places in Jade Forest. But yeah, Valley of Eternal Blossoms before Garrosh had his little temper tantrum. Or Valley of the Four Winds. Simply because, again, it's just so chill there. They're farmers. That's what they do all day. They just farm. And go to the farmer's market and, you know, talk about their problems. And, you know, and it rains a lot, which I love.
After that, we're venturing back all the way again to the Burning Crusade and Outland. For me in TBC, there are really two standout zones which I think are above the rest. Those are Zangarmarsh as well as Nagrand. Zangarmarsh just feels good to step into after finally being done with Hellfire Peninsula, offering you a much different perspective on this alien world. It has a good music score to it, and I've always found questing there to be pretty enjoyable, bar the one or two quests where they want you to go swimming around for 20 minutes or so. The highlight of the zone though has to be the Coilfang Reservoir, which contains 3 dungeons and a raid. What sets this apart from other raid entrances or dungeons is that you need to actually swim down through a pipe to gain access to it, which is just to this day such a cool way to enter the instances. But despite me definitely being a Zangarmarsh enjoyer for the Burning Crusade, it just has to go to Nagrand as the top zone. As an equally tranquil and massive zone, Nagrand will be one of the places that you reach a bit later during your TBC questing. Straight away the floating islands throughout the zone make it instantly distinguishable to any WoW player. In fact, these floating islands, or some variation of them at least, were found by players in a hidden section of a map in vanilla, showing that this set of scenery had been a long time in the making. Nagrand features a return from the infamous Hemet Nestingwary, who had finally escaped the jungles of Stranglethorn Vale to make his way here, and he and his merry band of hunters have a whole lot of killing for you to be doing this time around. Nagrand also features the Ring of Blood. This was the first instance of this group-based PvE combat arena, which would go on to see reappearances in many expansions to come, such as the Amphitheatre of Anguish in Wrath or the Crucible of Carnage in Kata. There's also the Ring of Trials PvP arena as well, which you can venture into. And far to the west are high-level demons and even some level 70 content. In fact, the only part of Nagrand that feels a bit underused is Oshugun to the southwest. Perhaps the best feature of Nagrand is being able to stack up your quest log and return with the whole screen showing as complete, and in WoW there are few better feelings than that. Nagrand has always been a good zone to revisit, and I definitely rate it highly, which brings us on to our top.
Yeah, hands down, Hands down, Nagrand is the best in Burning Crusade. There's no competition. Oshagun would have been really great if it was utilized more, considering it's like a holy site. Um, but yeah, when you go to Garadar, like you have all these quests, and even if they're all, they'll be like right here, right here, right here, they're all over. But then you get them all done, and you can just go hand them all back in, and it really is a great feeling because you just have like all these freaking quests, like 10, 11 quests, it just gone, 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 gone. You just hand them all in. Then you have your little PvP area right there in Hala. The Ring of Trials, which is kind of fun, interesting. But yeah, the blood with the thing of blood, the trial of blood or the ring of blood. Yeah, you can get like if you need a new staff, that's a great place to get a staff. I remember when I was leveling, I needed a new staff, and my friend was like, "Do you want to do the ring of blood?" I'm like, "Is it going to be worth it?" She's like, "Yeah, you'll get a new staff from it." I'm like, "Okay, then let's do it." And it was quite the upgrade, like huge upgrade. I'm like, "Well, I'm really glad I did this then." But then they also introduced one like that in the amphitheater in Zuldrak, Wrath, and then Twilight Highlands had the Crucible of Carnage, which was okay. It for some reason it just didn't capture the same experience as the other two did, the amphitheater and this Ring of Blood. But I appreciate what it was going for. But yeah, hands down, Nagrand, best area leveling zone in Outland in Burning Crusade. And for all you Zanger Marsh enjoyers, sorry. No. Back in the day, it was like a slideshow because that thing made you so bad with the lag. Like you looked like a slideshow when running. You were like, that's how bad it was. Because you go in and there's all these massive mushrooms, and if you're not on a great computer, even if you had a good computer back then, people were still complaining that it was like terrible. But this place, it's nice, it's open, it's green. So yeah, it's the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep it down, except for gravity, which is working its way on its magic on the planet.
3 picks with 3 versions of WoW left to go over. At the 3rd spot is Wrath of the Lich King, and you probably already know which zone I'm going for here. It's practically the most basic, best zone you can pick, but it's got that reputation for a reason, and I'm of course talking about Grizzly Hills. When I'm thinking back to Wrath of the Lich King, honestly Howling Fjord isn't that far behind Grizzly Hills in terms of how much I enjoyed the zone. The first boat ride into the Howling Fjord from Stormwind is just amazing, the soundtrack is great, and the progression through the zone is strong too. Blizzard even tried to put some kind of Fell Reaver type roaming mob in the Howling Fjord too in the Storm Giant, but I can't ever remember getting caught out by him. In fact, the only real letdown with the Howling Fjord for me was some of the quests towards the start of the zone, where you have to use so many items that just have an obnoxiously long cooldown for no reason. The Grizzly Hills though is a banger zone throughout. Perhaps the most iconic part of it is simply the soundtrack, which was unlike anything we had heard up to that point in time. Across the land of Northrend 2, Grizzly Hills is a break from all the death and or snow that you can find in any other zone. It even has a throwback to Archmage Aragorn, who has risen from the dead to control a new pack of Worgen, before you track him down and put a stop to that once again. Grizzly Hills also has a bunch of quest hubs that all feel pretty different from one another, such as the Dwarves in Dunargol to the southeast, the Troll Ruins just north of that, and even a PvP zone in Venture Bay to the southwest. Overall, the Grizzly Hills combines a great soundtrack, good appearance with varied questing, and I think that's what makes it so memorable. At the 2nd spot is going to be the entry.
Yeah, I mean, I love Howling Fjord. I really do, and it's a great spot for you to level. and kind of get introduced to the whole, hey, you're a Northrend now. But this, I mean, he says about death and all that, but then you have a world tree right here. And then you go inside to find all the, furbolgs are just crazy now. And it's your job to slay them. But yeah, you got Drakthar and Keep. Ursoc's Den, Ursoc, Wild God. The Amberpine Lodge, classic. Got Blood Moon Isle, where Rugal is. But yeah, all these different factions and races and all that. You got troll stuff there. You've got Iron Dwarf stuff there. You got Worgen stuff, Furbolg stuff. A little something for everyone. The music, it very much feels like Scotland. You have like a Scottish thing going on, which very peaceful, very relaxing. You have all these little things of bodies of water, especially right here. Most people are more remember more of like these right here. So it's just the music, just sitting here, just go to like Amberpine Lodge and just chill. Find a safe place and just chill. Just listen to the music. But if I had to pick anywhere, I would still say Crystal Song Forest. It's not much, but it's by far the most unique looking zone. Pretty much still, even compared to like Ardenweald. So, even though it's not a zone, but Crystal Song Forest, yeah, I would definitely choose that. But when it comes to like this kind of leveling zone, this kind of experience, yeah, Grizzly Hills definitely takes the cake and eats it too.
That's what makes it so memorable. At the second spot is going to be the entry from Legion, and here it's definitely the best endgame zone Blizzard has ever made, and that remains true today, and that would be Suramar. Suramar followed along the story of a hidden group of Nightborn elves, and took them from desperation and hiding to over time being able to reclaim their city. There hasn't been a more complete story taking place in a zone than Suramar in my opinion, and a big reason why is that not everything was available from day one. As patches progressed, more of the story was rolled out, new characters were introduced, or new parts of the city. Suramar had Withered training, which allowed you to raise your own army and put them to the test, as well as some voice lines from the guards that anyone who played the expansion will instantly recognize. This zone felt genuinely dangerous at first.
An illusion! What are you hiding? Something's not quite right. You heard it all the time. All the time. And those will be ingrained into your brain, whether you want it or not. Those lines, it's an illusion. What are you hiding?
Too, because there was no flying and there were so many obstacles between the various objectives, but you really got the feeling as though you were undercover, gradually restoring the Nightborn to their former glory, as well as eliminating the Legion. And of course this all culminated in the Nighthold raid. Overall, Suramar was an amazing zone, visually great, good soundtrack, interesting questline, and a story that really felt impactful. As such, it deserves such a high spot on the list. Which means at the top spot is the entry from Vanilla, or should I say entries? I say this because originally I wanted to just pick Westfall for Vanilla, but I've realized that it's more than that which makes this part of the WoW universe so special. It's how everything is connected together between Elwyn, Westfall, Redridge and Duskwood. In future expansions, zones are more often than not just their own thing and they have their own part of the story to tell. They're designed for certain level brackets and they award loot of a certain item level. This wasn't the case in Vanilla, where you were absolutely expected to go back and forth and to visit different zones time and again. And for me, that opening quest loop for the Alliance from say level 12 all the way to about 28 is one of the best and most replayable sections of any game that I've ever played. Of course there's other zones in the mix too, such as the wetlands to get to this level, but those 4 zones around Stormwind are just what make it such a great experience. You go from a fresh adventurer with nothing in your bag to having some experience and abilities. You might find shoulder items, rings and possibly even a neck if you're lucky, and above all you'll really start to take steps into the mid-game of Vanilla's leveling content, where things only start ramping up more and more. From just getting started out and finding out about the Defias Brotherhood, to taking on the elite orcs in Redridge, to all the iconic quests in Duskwood such as unleashing Stitches. Blizzard just did such an incredible job with this set of zones, and really over 20 years later for me, this experience just hasn't been beaten. But that's it, and just my opinion on the best overall zone.
I mean, everyone always says Elwyn Forest and Westfall and Duskwood are like the best leveling experiences. I mean, maybe for Eastern Kingdoms, but I mean, I don't know. I I guess I should pick for something for at least Kalimdor, because I agree. You know, it really is a great leveling experience. Um, but when it comes to like Eastern Kingdoms, uh, wow, I really think the Barons, like old, like the vanilla Barons, not the northern southern Barons that after Cataclysm. Although I do like part of the Emerald Dream popping up in the Barons, this is cool, but no, I prefer the OG Barons. It was just, it was a different time. It was a different time. Um, Felwood's pretty fun. A lot of history with Felwood, like lore history. Felwood's pretty good, aesthetically pleasing to look at, considering all things considered, being Felwood. So there's a lot of Fel, a lot of demons, a lot of Burning Legion stuff. Winter Spring is, I mean, it's a snowy zone, which I love. The questing is relatively easy. Like, you've got your main little hub, and you just pretty much get all your quests from there, and you go out and you come back, and oh, thank you. Here's your reward for being such a good quester and being a good champion, and thank you for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. I would say Tanaris, but then there's the bug, you know, the Silithid or whatever. That's nah. I do like Zul'Farrak though, probably one of my favorite dungeons. But I think when it comes to encompassing what leveling should be or feels like, Silithus. No, I'm kidding. Not Silithus. God. I mean, technically, I said Hyjal, and Hyjal is, but that was part of Cataclysm. But we're talking about like vanilla. I don't know. Like, I'm partial to like Durotar. I mean, they're relatively easy quests. You can get a whole bunch of them, like Razor Hill. Or Sen'jin Village. There's just a shitload of quests and just a small area that you can do. The Echo Isles are pretty cool. I mean, they're nothing special, but you know, it's trolls and stuff like that. And you really can kind of experience what the Horde has had to deal with, because unlike the rest of Kalimdor, for the most part, Durotar is just, I mean, they call Barons barren, the Barons, but Durotar is barren. There's like no trees, no water, no nothing. It's just red earth. So you can only imagine the kind of struggle that the orcs have had to deal with a lack of supplies. You know, having to import everything because they can't get their own things there. There's no water apart from seawater. There's no trees. Very little mining that they can do. So I think when it comes to like lore wise, I would say Durotar. Not to mention it's named after Durotan, you know, Thrall's father. But it really lets you know the struggles of the Horde. You know, you look at the Alliance and they have these beautiful areas, lush and ripe with fruits and vegetables and, you know, materials. And then you look at where the Horde is and you see Durotar and you look at the struggles they're going through and you're like, ugh, I would hate to be here. Like, you look at Durotar and you're like, it just looks hot. Like, you're sitting there, you're like, oh God, oh, it's not even real. I'm feeling the heat. You know, you have Alliance where they get these beautiful places that rain. It rains. Nope, not in Durotar. Not in Durotar. So I think Durotar would really be a great, like I said, really quick, easy leveling. It really, lore-wise, it really lets you see what the Hordes had to deal with. And just the flow of those. So you have Durotar, and from Durotar you can go straight to the Barrens. From Barrens you can go to Stone Talon Mountains. So you have this nice little flow of these leveling areas. Or you can go to Ratchet and go Ratchet, another great place. So many quests in one area. You just go out, do them, and then you come back. Boom, 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 done. And you get like 2 levels or something. So I would say Westfall, that area, Elwyn Forest, Westfall, Duskwood for Eastern Kingdoms, and Durotar, and the Barrens for Kalimdor, because they really kind of let you see what the Horde's having to deal with. Again, yeah, like with like the Crossroads, same thing. There's so many quests there. You may have to go different directions, but you can it's basically you just can go around in a circle because it's all just around. So you just knock them all out, go back and hand them all in. But yeah. Love to hear what everyone else thinks. So just kind of like from each expansion, just in the comment, each expansion, just write what you think is the greatest zone in your opinion. And it could be for any reason, you know, one you personally like just because of the aesthetic or questing or whatever. Just let me know. But anyway, that's going to do for me. You guys know the drill. I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.